I'll never forget the way the sunlight spilled across our backyard that morning. Golden, warm, and almost too perfect, as if the universe itself knew it was our wedding day. I had butterflies in my stomach, but not from nerves. It was that good kind of excitement, the kind where your cheeks hurt from smiling so much. We'd decided on a small, intimate wedding right at home. No giant ballrooms, no chandeliers, no pressure to impress. Just us, our closest friends, our family, and the place that meant the most, our own backyard. My fiancée Emily had spent weeks stringing fairy lights around the trees, and her mom had baked the kind of cake you only see in magazines. The air smelled faintly of roses because Emily had insisted on fresh flowers lining the path to our homemade altar. "Can you believe this is finally happening?" I whispered to Emily as she adjusted her veil in the mirror. She grinned, her eyes sparkling. "I just hope Karen doesn't try anything today." My smile froze. Karen, our neighbor from 2 doors down. If there was ever a storm cloud in human form, it was her. From the day we moved in, she had made life difficult. Complaints about our lawn, our recycling bins, even the way Emily's wind chimes kept her awake. We'd learned to brush it off, but a part of me always wondered, how far would Karen go if she really wanted to ruin something? Still, I pushed the thought away. Today wasn't about her. The ceremony started just after 4 p.m. Soft music floated through the speakers, a playlist Emily and I had carefully made, our songs, the ones that told our story. Guests sat in folding chairs, fanning themselves with the little programs we'd printed. Everything felt magical. When Emily walked down the aisle, I swear time stopped. I could hear the shuffle of her dress, the little gasps from friends, and the birds seemed to hush as if they knew this moment mattered. My eyes stung with tears as I took her hands, ready to promise forever. But then, over the gentle music, over the sniffles of our family, came a sharp, angry voice. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Every head turned, and there she was, Karen. She stood on the edge of our yard, hands on her hips, eyes narrowed into daggers. Her voice sliced through the moment like broken glass. "You can't just throw a party in the middle of the neighborhood. This is disruptive." A murmur rippled through the guests. Emily's grip on my hand tightened, and I could feel her trembling, not from joy now, but from fury. I tried to stay calm, forcing a smile. "Karen, it's our wedding day. We're only going to be out here for a few hours. We even sent notices to all the neighbors." "I didn't agree to this circus," she snapped, cutting me off. "This is a violation of noise regulations, and I'll have the police here in 10 minutes if you don't shut this down." Gasps filled the crowd. My best man muttered, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." My heart pounded, not from fear, but from disbelief. She was really doing this on the single most important day of our lives. I looked at Emily, and she whispered through clenched teeth, "Ignore her, please. Let's just keep going." So we did. The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to regain the moment. He began speaking again, but Karen didn't stop. She stood there muttering loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ridiculous, inconsiderate, ruining the whole street." And just as we thought she might finally give up, she pulled out her phone. "Oh no," I whispered. Emily's eyes widened. "She's actually calling the cops?" Karen turned her back, phone pressed to her ear, her voice rising. "Yes, officer, I need you to come right away. There's a very loud, disruptive party happening. Yes, in a residential neighborhood. It's disturbing the peace." I felt my chest tighten. Guests were exchanging uneasy glances, some whispering. This was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and instead, we were waiting for the police to show up. I tried to shake it off, telling myself maybe they wouldn't even take her seriously. Maybe they'd laugh it off. But a sinking feeling told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because sure enough, 15 minutes later, just as Emily and I were exchanging our vows, 2 police cars pulled up in front of our house. I'll be honest, I felt my stomach drop the second I saw those flashing red and blue lights crawl down our street. The quiet hum of our vows was drowned out by the unmistakable sound of car doors slamming shut. Guests twisted in their chairs, some half standing, whispering nervously. Emily squeezed my hand so hard I thought she might crush it. Her face had gone pale, and I could see the mix of embarrassment and fury in her eyes. "She really did it," she whispered. "She actually called the cops on our wedding." And there she was, Karen, standing on the curb like she'd just won the lottery. Her arms were crossed, chin lifted, a smug little smirk tugging at her lips. She didn't even look embarrassed that 2 police officers were now walking straight into a backyard full of people dressed in their best. The officiant froze mid-sentence, his voice dying in the awkward silence. You could almost hear everyone's hearts thumping. The taller officer, a man with a calm but firm voice, approached us. "Good afternoon. We received a noise complaint." I swallowed hard, forcing a polite smile. "Officer, this is our wedding. We have music, but it's not blasting. We made sure to keep it low." Before I could finish, Karen cut in, marching closer like she was part of the investigation. "They're lying. This whole spectacle is disturbing the peace. I've been putting up with it all day. The noise, the cars parked on the street, it's a nightmare." The second officer, a woman with sharp eyes, held up a hand. "Ma'am, please step back. We'll handle this." But Karen wasn't having it. "No, you don't understand. This is a residential neighborhood, not a concert hall. They need to shut it down now." I felt my face heating up, my fists clenching at my sides. Emily squeezed my hand again. She whispered, "Don't lose it. Please don't give her the satisfaction." So I took a deep breath and explained. "Officer, we sent letters to all the neighbors weeks ago. Everyone was informed. It's just for a few hours, an intimate backyard ceremony. You can see we're not being rowdy. The volume's reasonable. We even told the DJ to keep it soft. You can ask any of the guests." The female officer glanced around, her eyes scanning the yard. People nodded quickly. Some even chimed in. "It's really not loud. We've been able to hear each other just fine." The male officer looked back at Karen. "Ma'am, from what I'm hearing, this doesn't qualify as disturbing the peace. A wedding ceremony like this during daylight hours is perfectly within reason." You could see Karen's face turn red. She sputtered, "Are you kidding me? Look at all these cars. Look at these people. They've completely taken over the street." The officer calmly replied, "The vehicles are parked legally, and there's no obstruction to traffic. Unless there's something else, I don't see a violation here." The guests started murmuring again, this time with relief. Emily finally let out the tiniest laugh, shaking her head. I could feel her tension melting just a little. But Karen? Oh, Karen wasn't done. "You'll regret this," she shouted, her voice cracking. "All of you, this isn't over. If you don't shut this down, I'll take it to the HOA, to the county, to whoever will listen." The male officer finally straightened up, his tone firm. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down. We've determined there's no violation. If you continue to disrupt this event, you may be the one committing a disturbance." The look on her face was priceless, caught between rage and disbelief. She stammered, but for once she didn't have a comeback. The female officer turned back to me and Emily, her expression softening. "Congratulations, by the way. We'll stick around a few minutes just to make sure everything stays peaceful, but as far as we're concerned, you're free to continue." Applause broke out among the guests, actual clapping and cheering like the officers had just given us their blessing. Emily wiped a tear from her cheek, this time from relief instead of anger. And me? I just stared at Karen. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her, standing there red-faced while 2 police officers basically told her she was wrong. Almost. Because as the ceremony resumed, I noticed Karen wasn't leaving. She lingered at the edge of her yard, arms crossed, glaring at us like a villain plotting her next move. Something told me this wasn't over. For a few blessed minutes, it felt like the nightmare was over. The police had left after assuring us everything was fine, the ceremony picked up where we left off, and Emily and I finally managed to exchange our vows. The relief on her face when she said, "I do," was something I'll never forget. It felt like maybe, just maybe, Karen's little stunt had failed. But if I've learned one thing about Karen, it's this: she doesn't lose gracefully. The moment we kissed, sealing the vows, I caught sight of her on the far side of her lawn. She was pacing, phone glued to her ear again. Her mouth was moving fast, her hands gesturing wildly, and though I couldn't hear the words, I knew exactly what she was doing. "She's calling someone else," I muttered under my breath. Emily followed my gaze and groaned. "You've got to be kidding me! What more could she possibly do?" We moved into the reception part of the evening, simple, backyard style. Tables were set up under the fairy lights, the food was laid out, and the soft music continued. Guests tried their best to relax, but the tension never really left. Every so often someone would glance toward Karen's house, whispering like kids telling ghost stories. And then she struck again. Not 20 minutes later, a white SUV rolled up to the curb. Out stepped the man in a blazer with a clipboard in his hand. He looked official, stern, like someone who spent his free time measuring lawns and checking fences. "The HOA," I whispered. My stomach dropped all over again. The man introduced himself in a flat voice. "I'm here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. We received a complaint about a large, unauthorized gathering." Emily's mother gasped. "Unauthorized? This is a wedding!" Karen appeared behind him, practically glowing with triumph. "Yes, thank you for coming. This event is way outside the guidelines. Too many cars, too many people, amplified sound. It's completely against community rules." I wanted to scream. But instead, I forced a smile and said, "Sir, with all due respect, this is our wedding day. We informed our neighbors in advance, and as far as we're aware, we're not breaking any rules." The HOA rep adjusted his glasses, flipping through his clipboard. "Well, technically, gatherings of over 20 people do require prior approval if amplified sound is involved." My jaw clenched. Karen's smug grin widened like she'd just scored the winning touchdown. But before I could respond, my best man, Ryan, stepped in. "Sir, the music isn't amplified like a concert. It's a small speaker, barely louder than a conversation. And as you can see, there's no disturbance. The police were already here and cleared everything." That last line made the man pause. He glanced at the guests, then at the little Bluetooth speaker sitting on a table. His brow furrowed. Karen jumped in again, her voice sharp. "It doesn't matter. Rules are rules. This should be shut down immediately. They're flaunting the guidelines and disturbing the community. If you don't stop this, then what's the point of having rules at all?" Her voice cracked on that last word. Everyone was watching her now, really watching, and you could see the shift happening. People weren't sympathizing with her. They were looking at her like she was unhinged. The HOA rep hesitated. "I'll need to review this." "Review? It's obvious. Shut them down now." Emily finally snapped. She stood, her veil catching in the breeze, her eyes blazing. "Karen, enough. This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. We've bent over backward to be good neighbors. We sent notices, we kept the music low, we even invited everyone to stop by. But you've made it your mission to ruin this for us. And for what? Because you don't like us? Because you can't stand seeing other people happy?" The yard fell silent. Even Karen seemed stunned by Emily's outburst, but only for a second. Then she laughed, this dry, humorless laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You think this is over?" she sneered. "This is just the beginning. I will make sure this wedding is remembered for all the wrong reasons." And with that, she stormed back to her house, slamming her door so hard it rattled the windows. The HOA rep looked uneasy. He muttered something about following up later and left, clearly not wanting to be in the middle of it. The guests tried to brush it off, tried to bring the energy back. The food was served, the music played on, but no one could shake the feeling that Karen wasn't finished. Every laugh, every toast, every clink of a glass came with an undercurrent of tension. And then, just when things were starting to feel normal again, Emily's little cousin came running up, her eyes wide. I think Karen's doing something weird," she said, pointing toward the fence. I turned, and my blood ran cold, because there, through the slats of the fence, was a thin stream of water, seeping into our yard. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, it was real. A thin stream of water was pushing its way through the fence, trickling across the grass and pooling near the edge of the reception tables. Guests noticed it too, standing up, whispering, staring like they'd just spotted a snake. I rushed over, crouched down, and touched the wet grass. Cold, fresh, running stronger by the second. My heart sank. "She turned on her sprinklers," I muttered. Emily joined me, her jaw dropping. She wouldn't. But oh, she would, and she did. Within moments, the sprinklers in Karen's backyard came to life, blasting in full force. Streams of water arched over the fence, spraying directly into our yard. Plates of food were splattered, dresses soaked, guests shrieking and scrambling to get out of the way. "Karen!" I shouted over the fence. "Turn them off!" But of course she didn't. Through the gaps I could hear her voice, laughing, actually laughing. Emily's cousin, dripping wet, groaned, "She's ruining everything!" Panic swept across the yard. People grabbed chairs, dragging them further back, trying to save what they could. Someone threw a tablecloth over the cake, but not before water splashed across the frosting. The fairy lights fizzled and sparked as drops hit the cords. And then Karen's voice pierced through it all. "You can't stop me. It's my property, and I can water my lawn whenever I want." I swear I saw red. My fists clenched, my whole body trembling with rage. This wasn't just petty anymore. This was sabotage. She was deliberately destroying the single most important day of our lives. Emily was sobbing now, her makeup streaking down her face. "Why is she doing this to us?" she cried. Before I could answer, Ryan, the best man, stormed toward the fence, shouting, "Lady, you're insane! People are going to call the cops on you this time!" And right on cue, like fate itself wasn't done playing with us, the police cars rolled up again. Same two officers, stepping out with looks that said, "Really? We're back here again?" This time they didn't need an explanation. They saw the chaos, the wet tables, the guests in their dripping clothes. The female officer's jaw tightened as she marched toward Karen's yard. "Ma'am, step outside right now," she barked. Karen appeared, clutching her garden hose like it was a weapon. Water still sprayed from the sprinklers behind her, soaking her shoes. But she stood tall, smug. "What? I'm just watering my lawn. Perfectly legal. Nothing you can do about it." The male officer pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am, you are intentionally directing water into your neighbor's property, damaging personal property and disrupting a lawful event. That's not watering your lawn. That's harassment." Gasps rippled through the guests. Emily grabbed my hand, her eyes wide. Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, you people are so dramatic." The female officer's voice dropped an octave. "Turn off the sprinklers now." There was a long pause. Karen glared at us, then at the officers. For a second, I thought she'd refuse, just to prove a point. But finally, with a sharp huff, she stomped back and shut the water off. But the damage was already done. Tablecloths sagged with moisture, flowers drooped, guests looked miserable. And Karen, she had the audacity to smirk as she came back to the fence. "There," she said, crossing her arms. "Happy now?" The male officer didn't flinch. "Ma'am, you've officially crossed into criminal behavior. You've disrupted this event twice now, and if you continue, you will be charged." Karen's smirk faltered just a little, but then she snapped back shouting, "You can't stop me from living in my own home. You'll all regret this." The officers exchanged a look, one that said they were just about done with her. But instead of arresting her on the spot, they gave one last warning. "If we have to come back here again tonight, you're going in cuffs." And with that, they left us to pick up the pieces. The guests tried to stay positive, bless them. Someone dabbed at the cake, someone else grabbed extra towels. Emily's dad rallied everyone, saying, "Let's not let one bitter woman ruin this day." People even cheered. But as the sun set and the fairy lights flickered weakly back to life, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. Because through the window of her house, I saw her silhouette, watching, still plotting. And I had no idea what her next move would be. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, our backyard looked like a battlefield that had survived a storm. The tables were damp, the cake was lopsided, and some of the guests had gone home early, shaking their heads in disbelief. But for those who stayed, there was this fierce determination, like we were not going to let Karen win. Emily's dad cranked up the small speaker again. Someone popped open a bottle of champagne, and soon laughter began to creep back into the night air. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd finally get to breathe. That hope lasted about 15 minutes. It started with the smell. Sharp, acrid, unmistakable. Smoke. I turned my head toward the fence, and my stomach knotted. A thin plume of smoke was curling upward from the corner where our yards met. "What the hell?" Ryan muttered, already moving toward it. We rushed over, and there it was. A pile of burning trash smoldering on Karen's side of the fence, just close enough that sparks were spitting onto our lawn. "She's lighting a fire?" Emily gasped, her voice shaking. "At our wedding?" Before I could even process it, Karen appeared in her yard holding a long lighter, her face illuminated by the small flames. She looked wild-eyed, her grin unsettling. "Oh, don't mind me," she called out sweetly, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Just having myself a little bonfire. Perfectly legal." "Are you insane?" I shouted, my blood boiling. "That's right by the fence. You're going to set something on fire." Her laugh was high-pitched, almost manic. "Maybe if you didn't throw such an obnoxious circus, I wouldn't have to." Panic spread through our guests. Some grabbed buckets of water, others rushed to pull tables further back. Emily clutched my arm, tears in her eyes. "She's going to burn the place down." That's when Ryan snapped. "That's it. I'm calling the cops back. She's done." And he did, dialing with shaky hands, his voice firm as he told them exactly what was happening. Minutes later, like déjà vu, those familiar flashing lights lit up the street again. This time, the officers didn't walk. They stormed into our yard, their faces set in stone. "Ma'am," the officer barked, pointing at the flames, "step away from the fire now." Karen actually rolled her eyes. "Oh, calm down. It's just a little trash fire, perfectly under control." But it wasn't. The flames were growing, licking higher, spitting sparks onto our lawn. The male officer didn't waste time. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from his car and doused it, the hiss filling the night air until only smoke and ash remained. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, turning back to her, his voice low and deadly serious, "you've crossed the line. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is reckless endangerment." Gasps spread across our guests. Emily squeezed my hand so tightly I could feel my pulse in my palm. Karen, meanwhile, was losing it, screaming as they led her toward the police car. "This isn't fair! You'll regret this! I own this neighborhood! You can't do this to me!" But they did. They loaded her into the car, slammed the door, and drove her away. The moment the taillights disappeared, a cheer erupted from the guests. Laughter, applause, even tears. For the first time that day, it felt like maybe we had actually won. The nightmare was over. Or at least, it seemed like it. Because as Emily and I stood there holding each other under the broken fairy lights, I couldn't shake one thought from my mind. Karen might be gone tonight, but tomorrow she'd be back. And the fallout from this was only just beginning. The night Karen was taken away in the back of that squad car, our backyard erupted into celebration. Guests clapped, hugged, and raised their glasses like we had just won a war. And in some ways, it felt like we had. But when the laughter settled and the adrenaline wore off, reality hit me. Our wedding had been hijacked. The decorations were waterlogged, the cake was half ruined, and the memories of our vows were tangled up with police sirens, shouting, and the sight of Karen being dragged off in cuffs. I remember Emily leaning against me, exhausted, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She whispered, "I just wanted it to be perfect." And that broke me. I wrapped my arms around her and said, "It wasn't perfect, Em. It was chaotic and insane, but it was ours. And at the end of it all, we're married. That's what matters." She smiled faintly through her tears, and in that moment I knew we'd look back on this someday and laugh. Maybe not yet, but someday. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Everyone had heard about the wedding fiasco. Some had seen the police cars, others claimed they heard Karen screaming as she was taken away. People we barely knew stopped by to say, "We're so sorry," or "Congratulations," and "Wow, what a story." Even the HOA president showed up, red-faced and apologetic. He admitted, "We had no idea she'd go that far. Frankly, she's been a problem for years. What she did was unacceptable." Apparently, Karen's little stunt had backfired spectacularly. Instead of being the neighborhood hero, she was now the villain. People were tired of her antics, and this wedding fiasco was the final straw. Complaints piled up against her, and the HOA announced they'd be reviewing her membership. As for us, we decided not to dwell on the chaos. We had our marriage license, our rings, and, most importantly, each other. The guests who stuck it out still swore it was the most unforgettable wedding they'd ever attended. Ryan, my best man, even joked, "Hey, you didn't just marry Emily, you made neighborhood history." But the real moment of clarity came a week later, when Emily and I were sitting on the porch sipping coffee. She looked at me and said, "You know, if we can survive that on our wedding day, I think we can survive anything." And she was right. Karen tried to ruin us, but all she really did was give us a story. One we'd tell for years to come. A story of chaos, resilience, and a love that refused to be drowned out by sprinklers or silenced by screaming neighbors. Our wedding wasn't perfect. It was unforgettable. And in the end, that's so much better.